Welcome to Bending Over Backwards with James Adkins. I'm your host, Dr. James Adkins, where each week we take a deep dive into what it takes to break through barriers and change the game, whether that's in business, medicine, or life. Today, my guest I'm speaking with is Chelsey Valeri, who is a LCSW. She's a licensed therapist, and she has her own practice. She has an amazing story to tell. She has broken through many barriers in her life. I'm just really happy you're here today. Thanks for coming today,
James.
Chelsey. Yeah, you bet. So I'll dive right into it.
Okay.
What brought you into the therapy field?
So I actually started in a undergraduate program when I was not a stable human being, and I was unfortunately addicted to drugs and alcohol early on in my teens, and early 20s, but I had a passion for psychology, so I think I was trying to treat everyone in my life and myself while not stable, and went to university and so forth. Long story short, had to drop out, sought treatment, and then I went back for my degree. Long answer short is personal experience.
Personal experience. Yeah. And you have an amazing story.
I have a complex story, that's for sure.
It's a beautiful story. So we'll start with, you survived 2 organ transplants.
Yes.
That's a powerful story.
Yeah.
And how was your personal experience with an organ transplant? How has it influenced your approach to trauma therapy?
Oh boy. Okay. So I was preparing for double organ transplant, 1 surgery, and I knew it would change my life, but I didn't understand the ways in which it would really change my life. I received 3 false alarm calls before my 4th call came in. And each time the false alarm call came in, the level of heartbreak and fear I felt was truly overwhelming. I think because it put the reality into like, I need this to survive, and now it's being taken away.
So the false alarm, they told you, we're ready for you, and then it didn't work out.
Yeah,
Or
and then the organ was too damaged, mainly the pancreas. So I got one kidney and a pancreas because I'm was type 1 diabetic.
Wow.
So that was a huge roller coaster, which has taught me a lot about the anticipation of like a planned trauma, if that makes sense. So I was in a traumatic experience of being in kidney failure with 2 young kids and a thriving business and a life I really wanted to live. And then
Scary.
Just
flat out scary.
Just flat out. Yeah. Just terrifying, for probably the last year before my transplant.
How long was that window when those 3 false alarms before you had your
10 days.
But that's still.
You can imagine my nervous system, the roller coaster of my family. We were all just up and down like crazy. One time I was gowned up, IVs in, ready to be wheeled back. And they're like, no, sorry, pancreas is too damaged. So that was a really intense period of time. And the longer I've had the organs, the more I realize that I'm alive because of someone's gift of organ donation upon their death. And that is still changing my outlook on life, I think, quite a bit, because I'm alive and thriving today because someone, lost a family member and lost their life. So that's difficult. I know I didn't answer your original question.
No. But it's shaped your approach to trauma therapy for sure. So what unique challenges have you found in the space you're in today? Being a trauma therapist is a taxing job, I would assume.
It is. And I started my private practice 5 years ago at the beginning of COVID. And
were you doing that through Zoom or?
So I did some in person, some Zoom, but the modalities in which I'm trained and specialize in, it's really better.
You need an eye to eye, right?
Feel the energy and the nervous system and so forth. So what I did learn to do is market myself really well, because so many people were on Zoom. No one knew where to find effective trained trauma therapists, because a lot of people say they're trauma therapists, just like a lot of people say they're spine specialists, and there's a lot of people who are not. And I have dedicated my entire career, all my training, to being specialized in very complex trauma disorders, because that is what I struggled with for years and years and years, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know where to go. Long after I got sober, even something was like deeply wrong with me, and that's why I created my practice, and that's why I created our center now, which provides IOP level of care specifically for complex trauma survivors.
And that's intensive outpatient
Yeah.
therapy, correct? What's the P? Intensive outpatient therapy. I
Yeah.
know
Oh,
that. I
it's-
should
yes,
know that.
IOP.
Yeah. And that's in Scottsdale here.
It is, yeah.
Okay. The name of your company again?
Healing Foundation Center.
Okay. And how can people find you?
Online.
Online?
We have a great website.
Okay.
And we do have an Instagram as well.
Okay.
But all of our contact information is on our website.
Okay. Can you share a powerful story from your experience that kind of highlights the interaction of physical pain and the emotional recovery side of that?
Yes. So I have quite a bit of experience with being chronically ill. So I'll kind of start there, and it's morphed into something that has required much more mental health focus for me personally. Being a type 1 diabetic I didn't get diagnosed till late in my teen years and the height of my addiction. And when I was already very disconnected from my body and I had no idea how to take care of myself, landed in the ICU more times than I can count with complications. And then as I got sober and started to heal, I was introduced to the connection with mind and body. And that was a very disruptive, distressing process for me, as I'm sure you know. And then almost 6 years ago, I got diagnosed with trigeminal neuralgia and cluster headaches, two of the most painful.
People
Headache.
kill themselves with those.
They do. Both are called suicide.
We see patients with those conditions.
Yeah, suicide headaches. And I was like, why me? Like, I do
You've
not.
had enough. You've had a little bit of trauma
yeah,
already.
It's like, I've already had this. Why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
And then my kidneys failed. And then it just
One.
kept going.
Yeah.
And I think my mental health, while I built a lot of resilience back since a lot of my childhood and adolescent years, like all the trauma that took place, the impact that being chronically ill and in chronic pain has had on my mental health has been great, especially since having kids, because I have a whole other world to live for other than just myself.
Sure. It is. It's hard to break that cycle in your brain. That movie that you keep running when a person's had trauma isn't it? You know, I probably most people will say they've had trauma, but you've experienced it to another level. But that movie runs in your brain, doesn't it?
It really
And when you
does.
get some level of stress, it just kicks in and starts running.
Yeah.
How do you so meditation played a role clearly with you?
So yes and no. Early on it did. And then full disclosure, I really struggled with a dissociative disorder, and meditation was not ideal for a dissociative disorder, but mindfulness more was
Sure.
than meditation.
Sure.
So along the same realm, but that was what really continues to help me now that I'm in a really stable place with dealing with my chronic pain.
Sure. And there's an interesting nexus between patients who can't control different parts of the endocrine system, but specifically their blood sugar levels and cravings.
Yep.
Isn't there?
Yeah.
You know, we tell our patients that are having problems that maybe have been dependent on opioids, and we've weaned them off opioids or weaning them off opioids. We explain to them the importance of controlling their blood sugar levels.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think it's such a simple little thing.
I know. I feel like a whole new person since having
Yeah,
a
because you're
working
diabetic
pancreas.
too.
Yeah.
You were,
So since having a working pancreas, I'm like, what is this life? My moods are not near as up and down.
Yeah.
I'm just at 80 or 90 all
Right
the time.
on. Like, this is easy.
Yeah, I'm like, what? This is a whole new, like, just a complete gift.
Sure. But you didn't get diagnosed as insulin-dependent diabetic until you were into 17.
Yeah.
But you had trauma way before that.
Yeah.
And
Which I think there was a big correlation in my diagnosis.
Yeah. What do you have a morning routine? I'm a big morning routine person, and I love to ask everyone, all my guests, and even I used to my patients, but
Yeah.
what's your morning routine to kind of ground yourself for the day?
I kind of suck at morning routines. However, I'm better
I love the honesty.
I'm better at a nighttime routine. But my morning routine is get up, get coffee, let my dogs out, and start my kids on getting ready.
Okay, getting your children's your morning routine.
Yeah, they're 5 and 7. So
Awesome.
it's kind of busy getting them ready for school.
Yes.
But I do go to Pilates as many times a week as I can.
So you're an exerciser.
Getting back to it since surgery, yes.
Yeah.
But I do love exercise.
And your surgery, I shared with me 6-8 months ago.
6 months, August 11th.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had a neurosurgery in March of that same year too.
We talked about the sponge procedure for your trigeminal neuralgia,
yeah.
which unfortunately didn't fix you. But
no, it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
So-
you know all about balancing emotional health and personal trauma,
Yes.
and then also running a business and a household.
Yep.
You've got no stress, Chelsey.
None, no stress. And I keep planning all these international trips for my family and I.
I understand you are an international traveler
I
quite a
love
bit, aren't you?
traveling.
Yeah. Right.
When I get stressed, I'm like, let's go on a trip.
It's good. It's good. What advice would you give someone that's at that nexus? They've we'll see it. We'll see a patient that maybe had some childhood trauma, and then they get in a car accident, and they don't heal, and we have to. So then we have to bring in. I think I shared with you. Although I've been running a spine and pain program for 27 years, we're just now wisening up enough to realize how important folks like you are. And LCSW is a crucial part. A new initiative in our organization, in my company, is bringing LCSWs in to work right alongside spine surgeon, pain physicians, chiropractors to make sure that we don't forget the biggest part of this is often in between your ears.
Yeah.
So what do you say about that?
I think it's highly important. I think from my experience, somatic experiencing, which is a specific type of nervous system based therapy, should be mandatory for anyone.
Somatic experiencing.
Yeah.
So I know what the somatization of pain is. I'm trained very well with that. But I don't know anything about this therapy. So
Yeah.
share with me. What is that kind of in a
So
nutshell?
it's really learning about all the different functions within your nervous system.
Okay.
So
Educating your patient.
Yeah, educating your patients and helping them locate where there may be some fight, flight, freeze, and really distressing sensations located, and then working to discharge it from their system because it's stuck, right? And when things are stuck in our body and in our mind, they really I should say, become disordered. Yeah.
Yeah. Physiological changes and then eventually disease.
Yeah.
Right.
And I believe that wholeheartedly.
I think everybody's behind you today.
Yeah.
Years ago,
Thankfully.
you're a weirdo if you said that a patient's mind was causing, these diseases, but now we know they do. Now we know they do. Who's one of your mentors in the behavioral health or just in general? Who's one of your mentors?
So I've been I'm always reading 2 books. One is listening to a memoir on Audible while I drive, and then reading a book for fun every single night. And I've been
That's how you're so sharp. You're educating yourself all the time.
But I love reading and listening to survivors' stories.
Yeah.
Right now, I know this sounds crazy. I wouldn't say she's my mentor, but I'm listening to Paris Hilton's memoir, and there was so much misconception about who she was, what she went through, and so forth in the media, and especially back in the 90s and 2000s when so many wounded and traumatized individuals were in the spotlight for being bad and for having bad behaviors.
She was painted with a broad brush, wasn't she?
She really was.
I met her in 1998
Did you?
in Scottsdale
Yeah.
at a bar.
Did you?
I talked to her. I thought I was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm sure. She's actually right there in her memoir talking about around that time. But she really has survived a lot. And I am really looking up to people more who are speaking out about surviving and building true resilience. To me, resilience isn't just getting through something. It's learning to live with and afterwards and so forth.
And growing from
and
that.
growing from it. Yeah. And not being stuck in it and just taking more trauma on. Right.
So she, obviously, I don't know anything about her history or the book you're reading. You recommend it?
I do.
You
Yeah.
do? What's one message you've gotten out of that, would you say?
This is so simple, but really not to judge behaviors and put them into a box if someone's being bad or out of control. I really believe if we look at human nature, there's a reason behind most behaviors that are self-destructive. I don't think people open their eyes and think, I'm going to self-destruct today, right? It's not a conscious cognitive process.
Yeah.
It's deeper than that.
Yeah. We humans are flawed.
Yeah.
And it is so easy to judge other people.
It really is.
It's I have a little note card that I have in a place where it's visible for me, and it has 2 words: don't judge. Yeah. It is your life is richer when you don't judge, and boy, usually you're the therapist, but I feel like we're judging people. We're judging ourselves all the time, and we're good at taking my pastor likes to say, we're good at taking ourselves to the woodshed. Yeah. Aren't we? We're really
and
good.
Other people when we're hurt, right?
Yeah.
It's really easy to do that.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Cartman from the 60s, a dreaded drama triangle?
Yes.
Isn't that a great, that is for people who are listening, the victim, the challenger, and the rescuer, right? That orientation versus the other orientation he talks about, where you're a growth orientation and that's really I feel like a victim some days. I have to fight that. I think that's
that's normal. We can all be victims, right? Of life and other people and circumstances.
And I'm good at pointing it out when I see somebody else that's being a victim.
It's hard to accept. I know it was for me to find that balance between I was a victim, but that doesn't mean I have to live in victimization all the time. Like there's a big difference for that for me.
Was there a moment when you just knew, I'm going to get through this? I got it now. Was it? I mean, I'm sure there's an evolution of healing. I'm not, but was there some epiphany that you had? Was there some
There's
a few?
that stand out
Take me on that timeline a little bit. Share with me a couple of those experiences.
So I was deep in my active addiction and in a very abusive relationship. My life was completely chaotic and dangerous, and my mom called me on the phone, and I was driving, and she said, today's the 5th year anniversary of your grandma's death. And my grandma died via suicide from alcohol and pill overdose. So the generational trauma, and addiction is there.
Yeah.
All I said back was, I'm ready to get sober. And just like that,
So that was an epiphany.
It was an epiphany. And
wow.
So that was one. And then my son, our oldest, was born 3 months early. So I was in the hospital, talk about more medical trauma, but I was in the hospital for a long time during that pregnancy, and he spent 90 days in the NICU. So it was quite a long journey. But he was born on my 7-year sobriety birthday. And I remember laying there getting an emergency C-section. I was like, we are not going to die today. Like, whatever God I believe in is not going to let this happen today, because it was already such like a big day for me. Yeah. So him and I share that birthday of sobriety and his birthday.
That's cool.
Pretty cool. And then many times throughout like my trauma recovery, I guess there have been big moments of being really, I think having kids allowed me to be connected to life on such a deeper level.
Boy, for sure.
Yeah. And gave me something to live for beyond myself. And just their vulnerability and their ability to play and just be in the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, you have kids. It's so inspiring to connect with them. So there have been a series of events with my kids that just like this, we're going to be okay.
It's hard to be cynical when you have children.
Yes, especially 2 little boys.
I have 2 little boys and a girl, and it's
not cynical beings.
They keep you on your skates.
They do, yes.
And yours are how old?
5 and 7.
Okay, that's very cool. Are you concerned about your children and of course you are, but do you try to teach them mindfulness? Is that too young at 5 or so?
No,
share with me how you do that. That's cool. That's really cool.
So I have bought many different little like reading cards to do in the morning and at night with them, like little packets of mindfulness for kids. Our oldest struggles with what people call ADHD, and we've chosen not to do medication. So
I think that's pretty brilliant, but that's not my expertise, but I certainly support that.
Yeah. So we try a lot of breathing techniques with him. We've done play therapy with him and really tried to teach both boys skills outside of screaming and yelling and throwing things and so forth. So, little boys, they can be kind of violent.
Yeah,
and,
they can. Yes.
they know to hit the couch or to hit something soft instead of one another and, really take some deep, slow, they both know how to do deep, slow breathing. And
So you've taught them breathing techniques.
yeah, we've taught them
What a
breathing
great
techniques.
way to slow down your nervous system. I mean, that is a fantastic way to
So they both
reorientate your
know.
nervous system.
They know,
Cool.
I'm going to take some breaths. I'm like, okay.
That's cool. I'm going to try that with mine.
Yeah. Doesn't work all the time.
When they're in
but they
pain,
know.
I'm okay. I know the pain side.
Yeah.
So when they're in pain, I'll sit there and coach them on breathing.
Yeah.
But I haven't thought about just the mindfulness stuff with the. I thought about trying to get them to meditate, but then when I meditate, half the time I'm sitting there, I'm like, I should be going to work. What
I
am I
know,
doing?
and then your mind's just going.
So I don't want to be a bad example with the meditation. Exercise is crucial too, isn't it?
It is.
It's really important. What about have you taken a hard look at the nutritional side of any of this? I mean that's your space, but what do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, so I try to eat as clean as possible, but I really believe like an 80-20, 85-15 split is the healthiest way for me anyways.
You can be too hardcore
Too
on
hard
that.
and
Yeah.
rigid. It's also hard in America when we have pretty crappy food.
Our food supply is awful.
Awful. So that's another thing. I've cut out dyes in our house for the most part without being too
Crazy
too
about it.
crazy. And
Yeah.
there's still a lot of birthday cake with dyes in
Sure,
it, but I just try
sure.
not to feed it to them every day. So I try to apply that to myself as well as much as possible.
I see. And what about as far as like, do you guys use medication? Or are you trying to be not medicine based? You do more all behavioral health.
Yeah, so we do more.
No
So
medication assisted therapy, really.
not really, no. So we
Okay.
do contract with a psychiatrist, but we're really medication moderate. Like
Okay.
if it is absolutely necessary for someone, depending on diagnosis and severity of symptoms for short term, right? Then we'll leave it between them and the doctor. But we're not a medication heavy
Yeah, we've
approach
got
at all.
enough prescribers.
We do, yes. So no, I do not prescribe. We use probably 4 main modalities to treat our clients.
What are those?
Okay, so there's structural dissociation theory.
Share with us.
Yeah, so that's based in the idea that there's fragmentation that happens in the brain when individuals experience chronic, persistent, and complex trauma. So it's the idea of this is happening, this is too much for me, I need to separate myself from it.
Okay.
So there's varying degrees of that take place. We use EMDR, which is
Familiar with
a
that.
really common modality.
And how do you apply that? I've seen different
Yeah,
applications.
so we use that kind of in the last phase of their recovery because sometimes people are too complex to go into reprocessing traumas right away. So that's one of our reprocessing models that we'll use when they're stable enough from a nervous system and dissociation perspective. We're dealing with very complex cases. Trafficking survivors, cult survivors, the list goes on of
Wow.
the most horrific things that humans can do to other humans. So there's plenty of time stabilizing. So EMDR, structural dissociation theory, is our main theory in which we use to apply to our clients. And then somatic experiencing and DBR, deep brain reorienting. It's a newer modality out of the UK.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that an electrical or physical application?
More physical. So it is working with the midbrain, the deepest part of the brain where the shock is held from trauma. So
The
in relation
old
to a car accident.
reptilian brain.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you look at the moment right before a car accident happens, your body picks up that shock. So that's what that modality works to treat.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So for our audience, can you share what EMDR is?
Yeah, so EMDR is a reprocessing model that's a phase model of treatment.
Okay.
So it works on connecting the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain because those wires are sometimes separated as a result of trauma and chronic stress. So it works to bring what happened in the past into the present in a manageable way. Okay. Not to say you won't experience distress, but it's bilateral movement. So I use buzzers. So my clients hold two buzzers, one in their left hand, one in their right hand, and they buzz, they alternate buzzing. So that allows for the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain to activate and bring information to the present day.
Do you have any thought on the use of ketamine?
Yes, I have a lot of thoughts on the use of ketamine.
With a professional, obviously.
Yes, with a professional. I think it can be a very powerful tool. But I think because of how powerful it can be, it needs to be used with more care than it has been used with. Because I see anyone offering ketamine, anyone doing ketamine, and I think depending on the complexity of the person's trauma, there needs to be a lot of psychotherapy done prior to the introduction of ketamine. But I have seen it work really effectively.
We've used it with some of our patients to try to wean off opioids. And we've seen, interesting enough, we thought that we would see benefits with pain. And we have. Yeah. But the biggest benefits have been all behavioral health. And that's not our field. But now we bring in those professionals in like you. So we're open to what works. It's tricky.
It is. Medicine. And I've done ketamine for my trigeminal neuralgia, and it was pretty effective. I was pain-free for about 3 months, which is huge in the realm of trigeminal neuralgia. But the mental health side effects weren't positive for me. They were more negative.
Interesting. So you wouldn't, it wasn't worth the trade-off. I'll take the pain.
Yeah,
you'd rather
it
have
was
the pain.
almost, would I try it again? Probably. In a different setting. I was just left by myself in a room.
Oh, really? Because we have a therapist with him.
That is not what I experienced.
Ooh.
I was just hooked up to an IV.
And see you in 30 minutes.
Oh yeah, see you in an hour.
Wow.
I was gripping on for dear life.
Tell me more about that. That's crazy.
So I was given something to smell to bring me back.
You're smelling salts. Wake up.
Yeah,
Get out of here. We got another patient.
The walls were all trippy designs, and then I had music on too. So I was like in a cocoon.
Like a K-hole.
Like a K-hole, all by myself. So I kept opening my eyes. I'm like, okay, I feel my hands. I'm still a real person right now. Like, it was not
good.
It was not good. It was not supportive. That's for sure.
So they took a therapy with a lot of potential good and just delivered it with the wrong vector, just
with
bad.
No support. So my experience was bad.
Was that in a professional? That was physicians? Really? In your field, kind of psychiatric, kind of, or
no? This was 4 years ago.
When it's just breaking in
the
community, California, new hippie, cool stuff. Okay.
So
wow.
I would try it again in a different setting.
Okay.
Most likely in a lower dose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember the dose you were given?
I don't, but it was not fun.
It was not good.
No. Not fun.
Goodness.
Kind of reminded me of like teenage rave years. And I was like, I'm okay. I don't want to do this again.
Okay, so you grew up in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay, and what city, may I ask?
Yeah, Lethbridge, Alberta.
Okay.
No, it's south of Calgary, so more people know about Calgary than Lethbridge.
I know Calgary. Used to go there as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. My family did business, or my grandfather did business there.
Nice.
What would people be surprised? I know you've got a great history, and it's beautiful to see how you're healing and you've healed from that. What would people be surprised to know about you? What would be a unique thing they would find out about you, Chelsey? They would be surprised.
People who meet me now, they see success and beautiful family, and all of those things are true. But a lot of people who meet me now have no idea of my history. I'm a fairly private person, believe it or not.
Well, thanks for coming to do this.
So even when I was going through, this was a big one. When I was going through kidney failure, I didn't tell anyone besides people really close to me. So I'd have lunch with colleagues, and they'd be like, "You're what? What?"
Yeah, my kidneys are failing. If I don't get a transplant, I'm going to die.
Yeah. And they're like, "What are you talking about?" Or I'm like, "Hey, I haven't seen
this
you
is
in a few
real.
months." I said, "Yeah, I just had an organ transplant." They're like, "What? Are you okay?"
Yeah.
So a lot of people were shocked.
Yeah.
I'm not a big, I'm going to blast all my personal life on social media until I have to.
Yeah.
Until I'm like, "Hey, by the way, I'm going into a double organ transplant surgery right now."
Selfie.
Yeah. That's kind of what I did. Yeah.
That's funny.
But I think it's a way to disconnect from what's happening to me too, in ways, is not to be overly present with it, because it was really overwhelming. Yeah.
So where are you taking your business? I mean, it's pretty exciting. You're
Yeah.
obviously a leader in your space. Where are you? You're making changes and breaking through barriers. Where are you going with this? What's your plan?
I don't know if we have a plan other than what we're doing, to be honest. We're very effective at the size that we're at, and I don't ever want to lose that.
Okay. Is your husband involved too?
He is. So
Is he a LCSW
he's
also?
not. He's not a therapist.
He's
He
a
does
business
the
side.
business side
Okay.
of things.
Okay.
So we're just really trying to perfect what we do. I think we've clinically perfected it. That's where we've spent majority of our time the last 3 years, clinically perfecting our services, and now smoothing things out from a business perspective.
Yeah, it's a with the changing insurance regulations
all the time.
and patients and resources. It's hard for people that are having physical and mental challenges sometimes to have the resources. Yeah, that's we've started a pretty innovative program for opioid use disorder.
That's great.
And we use LCSWs and a new way of prescribing Suboxone.
Yeah.
So-
Low dose naltrexone. Do you use it like that?
Yeah, but we microdose it,
Yeah.
but we also it's the way so the way you used to have to prescribe that medicine, you probably know, you had to have a special license, you had to have an X license, you could only have 100 patients.
Yep.
There are all these barriers to prevent, even though we went through this massive crisis, all these barriers to prevent us from using that medicine. The other thing is pain doctors specifically don't really want to deal with addiction because they're not experts on addiction, but they are experts on pain and using pain medicine. And so one of the problems with patients that have opioid use disorder is with the way that medicine used to be prescribed, Suboxone, is that we would have to wean the patient completely off their meds for 4 days and then start them on. Well, if our patients could have weaned off opioids for 4 days, they wouldn't have needed us.
Yeah, correct.
So now we start them, the patients in the exam room tells physician, you're in drug screen. Okay, you've got opioid use disorder. You're taking fentanyl. Here's the good news. You can keep taking it.
Yeah.
Take the Suboxone and take a quarter tab and you titrate down the opioids up to Suboxone and they don't have withdrawal symptoms.
Because that's what keeps a lot of opiate addicts using, because the withdrawal symptoms are so
It's
horrific.
that's what it is. They don't want to do that.
No one wants to be on drugs.
Nobody does.
No.
Nobody does. And when you combine really well-trained behavioral health, really LCSW is the backbone of that, and a pain doctor who's not afraid to prescribe that medicine, and you have a manual therapist, a good chiropractor, or a physical therapist, wow, you can do some cool things.
People's lives change.
You save lives. Yeah.
Living with chronic pain is no way to live. It is quite awful.
And so what you used to do with those patients is stop taking your opioids. Well, they can't.
Yeah, they can't. Yeah, it's really hard. I've seen low-dose naltrexone being used in a few different spaces lately, too, for mental health.
Even for patients with immune issues. I mean, it's used in a lot of ways. And I'm not an expert with it, but it's got a lot of applications.
Yeah.
What about do you counsel any of your patients on supplements? Is that part of your program? Do you have a nutrition person, or do you send them out for that
we
kind
send
of?
them out for that.
Send them out for that, because that's a big part of it,
It
too.
is, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll finish with this. What would you what advice again would you give someone who hears this, who's just struggling mentally, physically, and doesn't know where to start?
Yeah. My advice is to be your own advocate, or find an advocate for yourself, because there are.
You can't trust the healthcare system.
You cannot trust the system. Unfortunately, you can't trust a lot of
No,
professionals.
nope, you can't.
And I'm not saying they're intentionally causing harm, but they say they can help when they can.
Most of them aren't, but there are some bad actors.
There are.
Yep.
And if your gut is telling you it's not a good fit, don't go forward with it.
Trust that female sixth sense.
Yes, I don't think I would be alive today if I didn't advocate for myself. Even at the best, I got transplanted at Mayo, the best hospital around, right?
Yeah.
It was phenomenal, but I still had I had to do so much advocacy for myself in ways. Same with my mental health and just every area of my life.
The healthcare system's broken.
It's broken.
And if you don't have an advocate, it will chew you up and spit you out.
It will.
And
Absolutely.
it doesn't. It's immoral.
Yep. dealing
Yeah.
with insurance. I mean,
Oh,
all of that. You have to
terrible.
it's a full-time job
Yeah.
just managing it.
Even healthcare providers
Yeah.
don't understand it. I mean, I mean, you're a healthcare
Yeah.
provider, but how can a patient? They're lost.
And it's so overwhelming. And my advice would be to acknowledge the overwhelm, acknowledge and accept that
It's going to be
it's
that
going to
way.
be really
And
overwhelming.
you're going to have to navigate it.
And there's no way around
and don't feel
it.
like a victim, because it is going to help you.
Yeah.
No one's going to. A story I tell my little sons to try to toughen them up. I say, no one's going to pour you a warm soapy bath and light candles and figure this out for
Nope,
you.
they're not going
You got to do it yourself.
I know. And that's really true. It's sad, but it's true.
So get an advocate.
Yeah.
Your advice.
If you can't.
And educate yourself.
Yeah. If you can't self-advocate, find an advocate.
What else?
Nothing will stay as bad as it is forever. And I know it doesn't.
Pain is temporary.
It is. It is temporary. Whether it's emotional or physical, even my trigeminal neuralgia pain, it's every single day, but the pain does
Wax and wane.
It wax and wanes. Yes. It does go. It activates and it deactivates. And same with emotions. I think our, how is it? The certain chemicals in our body change literally every like 45 seconds when it comes to anxiety. Just such rapid changes that we're
a billion
not
chemical reactions going on in your cells
all
every
the
second.
time.
You know,
We're
it's
not going to be stuck in the panic attack for the rest of our lives, even though it feels like it.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much, Chelsey. Your story is
having me.
inspiring. I'm gonna bring you back if you'll allow me to bring you
Yeah,
back
sounds good.
sometime. It's inspiring, and I got the pleasure of being introduced to you from my family, who met you in a random place,
coffee
and
shop. Yeah.
I'm a spiritual person. Some people, I relate to God through Jesus Christ. Some people relate to God through Abraham, or or Allah. But the reality is there's a spiritual aspect to this, and I'm glad you're here. I really appreciate you sharing this with people. I hope today's episode helps you stand taller in your own shoes and realize that you can break through, and to be an advocate for yourself. If you have a mental health issue, reach out and speak to an expert. Thank you.